Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mike.
Are we good?
Hello, Mike.
Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mike Oliver, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Our topic for today is on vulnerability management, challenges, and opportunities, and what leaders should do about it. Today's event is sponsored by Cybersafe Foundation, a nonprofit organization working to combat cybercrime through security awareness and thought leadership. Joining me on the panel today are global leaders with a passion for cybersecurity and technology. Our first panelist is Confidence Stavely, founder and executive director of Cybersafe Foundation. Up next, we have Layla Wall, vulnerability and threat intelligence program leader at Smartsheet. Last but not least, Yoav Guttmann, senior vice president and CTO at WLT. Welcome, everyone. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Confidence, let me start with you first. What are some of the challenges facing vulnerability management programs globally?
Thank you so much, Mike, for that question. I think while I have a global response to that question, I would also be talking from the point of view of Africa, where I'm based. One of the biggest issues we have with vulnerability management in this part of the world would definitely be incomplete asset inventories. So asset management is still quite a big issue. And really, what is vulnerability management without asset management really done very well? So once there's that lack of foundation where some assets are unaccounted for or they're not on the inventory, it then leaves those loopholes that can be exploited by cyber criminals as well. We also have issues with identifying vulnerabilities. Sometimes those issues really border on lack of funding for the tools required. Sometimes it borders on the kind of environments that we're working in. Because sometimes with those vulnerabilities scanning and finding those vulnerabilities, it may knock some systems off. And then those issues really have an impact in how much support the program gets for the subsequent time. We also have issues around prioritization of vulnerabilities because really not all vulnerabilities are equal. If I was to put it that way, all vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities, but not all of them are equal. So vulnerabilities that, for example, touch on crown jewels, prioritizing them really high and ensuring that the management and the whole cycle of management of any vulnerability attacking all of those crown jewels are prioritized, and we can see the whole cycle from identifying it to remediating it and everything. Being able to report and view the whole cycle of that is also a challenge that we face.
Okay.
And I dare say also globally.
Okay, perfect. Would anyone else like to add? Layla, Yoav? Okay. My next question, Layla, this is for you. In the industry today, do you think we are doing vulnerability management the right way?
I think most of us started with the basics. So we looked at what vulnerabilities do we currently have in our environment, and then we tried to remediate those. But I think ultimately we need to shift left. We need to get into the CI/CD pipeline. We need to make sure that our critical and high vulnerabilities are not going into the production environment. And then finally, we need to make sure there's greater emphasis on threat intelligence. So what are we seeing out there in the real world? And then how does it affect our enterprises? And ultimately, our goal should be to have invisible security. So although I think vulnerability management is a journey, and I think like most of the world is kind of like we're getting the basics down now, but now it's time to kind of take it to that next level.
Okay, I have a question, and anyone can answer it. Just briefly describe for our viewers what is vulnerability management? Anyone could take it.
Well,
Just a brief.
vulnerability management is when you have threat actors and you have those threat actors could potentially impact your environment. So there's a risk that they could get into your environment, they could expose, different vulnerabilities. Maybe you have a particular software version that you could exploit in some way. So there's a number of different types of vulnerabilities, but in general, it is what risk is in your environment and what things are
Right.
currently being exposed.
Great. Thank you, Layla. Yoav, I have a question. Do you see a lack of mature asset management programs as a problem, and why?
So asset management, there's enough technology to that hold asset management inventory and kind of track the versioning, the availability up and down. The lack when it comes to vulnerability is to understand if any one of your assets has been attacked or compromised. And if you don't have asset management inventory, you don't even know that you've been attacked. So that would be the first goal of every organization, to get asset management intact, in control. However, in addition to that, we have to understand when one of your assets has been compromised and what do we do about it.
Okay. Anyone like to add to that? No. Confidence. What are some of the challenges you face in leading a vulnerability management program?
I think very strongly, one of the key challenges I've seen has been, um, you know, getting, senior executive funding for the program itself. It's usually something that's more reactive and something that's more compliance driven than it should be, in terms of building a culture around it and having a structured program that does good work for the organization on a continuous basis. So the compliance mindset is quite a bummer when it has to do with um, vulnerability management programs, and then of course getting the funding for it, because of course there may be tools required to do this work internally. We may need to outsource it to a service provider, um, be it an MSSP or a one-time person to come, do this work during that time, even for compliance, or someone to do it on a regular basis. So what we get very often is one-off thing for compliance, ticking the boxes and looking good with the report, but there is no continuity in the way this is done, because funding is a challenge. So yeah, that has been major issue I have seen. There's also, sorry,
Okay. Funding is a
just remembered. There's also a skills issue. Um, you know, getting skilled people to be part of the team, doing the vulnerability management from identification to remediation has also been a challenge.
perfect. Wonderful. Anyone else would like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add about asset
Leah, what are some of the?
inventory. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
just
hear you.
wanted
Go
to
ahead.
add, so there's been kind of a theme about asset inventory, and I think one of the challenges that we often see is everybody just says, yeah, we know we don't know everything, and we know asset inventory is awful. And, like Confidence said, we have to know, and Yohav, well, we have to know what is in our inventory before we know what we're looking for. So I think that's definitely one of our biggest challenges.
Agreed, agreed. And Layla, what are opportunities do you see on the horizon, especially training and education?
Yeah, so opportunities around vulnerability management, again, I think it's that enhanced threat intelligence. There's this whole other world that vulnerability managers need to be in tune with, and it's, what's on our dark web. um, are we purchasing any exposures that we might have? And then I think opportunities around AI and machine learning. I think that'll help us in the future to kind of run those hypothetical scenarios so that we can see how could those threat actors, both internally and externally, what are some of the things they might do, and how are some of the ways that we could stop that? I mean, sometimes it's even we could tighten compensating controls, and other times we could, include redirects. There's all kinds of things, but I think AI and machine learning will help a lot with that. And vulnerability
Layla,
management,
to add
there's
to that,
not a lot of training. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To add to that question, in your opinion, just opinion, are we 5 to 10 years away from AI or 20 years away? What do you think?
I think
Just a good guess.
more like 3, and I think it needs to be last year. I think that's going to be the wave of the future, but I also think, you'll have to have humans that are,
it's close around the corner.
building. Right.
That's perfect. Yoav, hearing all this, how should leaders communicate with the board on security vulnerability management programs?
So, to answer that question, I just want to introduce another panel for the vulnerability aspect, which is the human aspect. Technology has done a great job around the firewalls, around the enterprise, around protecting the perimeters of the infrastructure. What they're still working on is to understand the human factor, where somebody can hack in using an email address or impersonate someone else. And most of the cybersecurity incidents worldwide start with the individual, not so much with the company, because the firewall does a good job, and the technology do a good job around the controls. If you put the control together, if you use a network and VPN and put your security intact, the likelihood for somebody to come in from the outside is zero, unless he's coming through somebody else's email, through somebody else's Wi-Fi. If you see it at the airport, so the vulnerability should be focused more on the individual, more the awareness, rather than try to come with technology that can do the job for you. And with respect to your answer, education and awareness is top notch in my mind. You have to start there. People need to understand that.
Agreed.
That you may have a state-of-the-art security posture and state-of-the-art technology, and somebody can just hack in by logging into your email, or impersonate somebody, or send you a file that basically lead the gateway to get into your system. So security awareness is on the top of my priority, if you ask me. And when you communicate with the board, that's the way it needs to communicate. There got to be some more awareness around simple management, or how do you look at email? What do you do if it sounds suspicious? Do you click on an email automatically, or do you think about it before you click?
Yeah, to add to that, having campaigns where you're able to give immediate response when someone clicks on like a phishing email, that's a great way to train your employees to know, hey, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. And they'll hesitate for a moment before they do it again.
We're actually going through a campaign as we speak. We launched the first campaign last week, and we're going through a series of campaign before we kind of understand well the vulnerability in our organization, and then we're going to follow up with training. And interestingly enough, we just communicated with the board yesterday about the process that is taking place, and we are actually doing it as we speak.
Nice.
Oh, good.
Really nice. Good. And just to chime into what Yoav was saying about awareness, I think that one of very good ways to go about awareness as well is not to have it as always as an event or something that people do, but at work we could sort of find ways to embed reminders of the learnings from the awareness campaigns or awareness events in the daily work life of people within the organization. So something on the portal, for example, if you still work in the office, something at like a pull-up banner, at certain areas of the office. And this shouldn't be something that we only do on Cybersecurity Awareness Month, really.
Great call out.
Perfect. Wonderful. Confidence. Question. What What advice do you have for global leaders that are still struggling to keep up with strong security hygiene, like vulnerability awareness, assessment, and patching?
This might come off to some people as a joke, but I might as well just share it. While it's ideal to sort of, not necessarily always do your vulnerability management on production, live production, because of the speed at which innovation is going out, and for some organizations, that may be the only choice you have. And so I always make a joke and say, be good friends with the IT team, because when you break something, they may be nice, they'll be nice to you, while doing your work. So just make them good friends and partners in the work you do.
Perfect. Anyone else would like to add something? Perfect. Layla, what guidance do you have for your peers in the industry?
Well, like Confidence said, I mean, you want to shift left and you want to catch those vulnerabilities before they go into production. It's not always possible, but if you can, you want to try to do that. You want to auto discover your assets and maintain that asset inventory. It's imperative. You want to build a smart SIM. You want to set those thresholds. You want to set those alerts. Again, you want to stay in tune with the real world threats and exploits. You want to make sure that you're looking at how those threats impact your particular environment. And then finally, vulnerability management is really all about risk and relationships. So you want to staff people that are passionate but also empathetic. Just like Confidence was saying about, partnering with your peers, it's important to understand that everything can't be done in a single day, and that sometimes it takes give and take, and it's all about the relationships that you build.
Perfect. Yoav, would you like to add something?
Yes, I think again, the vulnerability is today shift from the enterprise to the individual. Security awareness is something that you have to constantly learn. Every day there's a new way to come and look for back doors, and people need to be aware of it. Just because you have technology or even AI that can handle it, it can handle it today, but it won't be able to handle it tomorrow because they keep coming with new and improved ways to tap into the back door. So security awareness is a very important topic that needs to be on people's mind, and that's what needs to be communicated.
Perfect. I have a question anyone could take. Zero trust, is that just a buzzword? Anyone?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
That's correct.
It is definitely the buzzword right now is zero trust, but you have to have some thought behind how you're doing it.
You've probably been doing it for a while.
Right? Do you have those controls in place?
Right.
And are you really doing zero trust?
Zero trust is the one enterprise, and it's being enforced. However, again, the tapping from the back door could violate all of those at once. It's not in the endpoint, and it's not through email, and it's not through Wi-Fi. It's on the enterprise network, so it's all nice to have and important to have. But again, all you need is a back door to get in, and you're in with the zero trust or not.
Yeah. Once you're in, you're in.
Once you're in, you're in. Yeah. And then the trust may be there, but you're already in.
My last question. Based on lessons learned, what advice do you have for leaders managing vulnerability? And anyone can answer that.
Number one, keep your asset inventory up to date. Tie those vulnerabilities to the assets. Know who the owners are so that you can work with those owners to remediate.
I would add, continue doing awareness session frequently to educate the end user to know what's out there and what to be on the guard for.
I'd like to add that
confidence.
Yeah, a good part of the work that someone overseeing a vulnerability management program will be doing would also be people management and leadership generally. So you will need to roll up your sleeves and really get your leadership skills to work for you.
Yeah, little things like
So what I hear
showing
from
how
you,
the new CVSS scores work, and there are little training things you can do that are fun.
so what I hear from you is, I think education is the key, huh? Training and education. It's been a big topic here as well, so this is good. Well, as we come to a close, many thanks to all of our viewers across the globe. We hope you've learned something new today. It has been an honor to be your moderator. Um, Thanks to our panelists and Cybersafe Foundation for sponsoring today's event. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.